Hello, teacher. Welcome to our group project about high-speed railway infrastructure. In this project, we also consider the case study of Vietnamese North-South high-speed railway project. Single members all participate in doing the content, doing the science, and doing the talking. So I put here contributions 100% because we all participate in every single thing.
So let's start with the clarity of the concept. So railway infrastructure refers to the fixed physical and technical system that allow rail transport to operate. So it includes the land, track structure, station, bridges, tunnel, signaling, and telecommunication system, and other fixed installation which require for railway operation, and the high-speed rail is a part of railway infrastructure, which can be understood as a railway system which designed for much faster, safer, and stable for long-distance travel than the conventional one. And the speed of high-speed rail is often 250 kilometers per hour on new lines, or 230 kilometers per hour, where the speeds still remain competitive.
So to operate a high-speed train, we need a dedicated high-speed railway. A dedicated high-speed rail infrastructure refers to the railway infrastructure specially built for the high-speed operations, typically designed for speed of 250 kilometers or above, and used primarily or exclusively by high-speed service rather than mixed conventional rail traffic. So I prepare here for two picture here demonstrate the structure of the trains and the railway. The high-speed train draw powers from the overhead wires via a pantograph, ensuring the continuous electricity supply. It well-tuned suppression and low center of gravity combined with the slapjack here maintain the stability at high speed. The car signaling and train control system, along with the precise fastening system, keep rail geometry accurate, and an aerodynamic lightweight design and PSC slab of the railway help distribute the loads evenly and reduce the infrastructure wear and tear. So why does the high-speed rail need dedicated infrastructure? The speed limitation and threshold. The high-speed tracks are designed to support the speed of about 250 to 350 kilometers per hour. Reaching this higher threshold required building tracks and train to a very high standard that older 19th century alignment cannot accommodate. The track geometry and curvative. The dedicated infrastructure is built with low curvative and high specification standards to allow for sustained high performance running. The operational reliability. Transitioning to a dedicated line has been shown that to improve the reliability, which is a key factor in attracting high fare paying business travelers. For structural stability, the high-speed travel requires a rigid and precise foundation to maintain the perfect rail alignment under extreme dynamic loads.
There's a few requirements for successful high-speed rail system. The first requirement is strong commercial potential. So high-speed rail works best between large metropolitan areas located relatively close to each other, and it needs appropriate station spacing. And high-speed rail requires dedicated tracks separated from solo freight and local trains, ensure the higher speed, capacity, and reliability. Um, it will have the availability of land for lines and terminals, and a good integration with wider transport system. So we are going to link this with what we have learned in the course. So one of the most important things to remember that in the course, railway infrastructure will introduce through three main elements: railway networks, vehicles, and terminals. This means high-speed rails should be also understood as a system of tracks, station operation standards, and connection, just not purely a faster train. One next thing we have learned in the course is terminals and intermodal links are very essentials. This is very relevant because high-speed rail station must be integrated into the wider transport system if the project is to create real accessibility and logistical benefits.
Okay, we come to the second part of the presentation is the real life example of the North-South High-Speed Railway project, and this part will include four main sections. Now we come to the first section. It's a brief introduction to Vietnam North-South High-Speed Rail project. So this project should be understood as more than a transport investment, since it was approved by the National Assembly and now being prepared by the government. And it is clearly being treated as a long-term national development strategy, not just a construction project. And what's matter here is the project being designed as a modern railway system from the beginning, and the technical standards show that the goal is not to improve the old line a little, but to create a much faster and more reliable backbone for intercity passenger transport. And here we can see the investment scale is extremely large, so the state will naturally play the leading role. At the same time, the private firms are expected to support surrounding services and station area development, which means the railway could also stimulate urban and commercial growth. Come to the second part. The second section is the current state of Vietnam infrastructure. So the North-South corridor is the country's most important economic axis. So when the transport demand rises on this corridor, the effect is not only local but more than a national connectivity, labor mobility, and the movement of goods and people across Vietnam. Therefore, the demand will continue to grow because Vietnam economy has expanded steadily in recent years. As income rises and urbanization continues, people travel more often for work, education, business, or and tourism. So the pressure on the transport system will become even stronger. Also, the current problem is that Vietnam still depends mainly on roads and aviation for long-distance passenger travel, and both modes are reaching their limits. So the corridor needs another high-capacity option that is both fast and more stable in the long term. The existing railway also cannot fully solve the problem because the infrastructure is too old and too limited. And in other words, the weakness of the rail in Vietnam today is not only about service quality, but also the basic structure of the system itself. This is why the issue become bigger than in the transportation, and the weak connectivity increase logistic costs and also slow regional development, especially in province between Hanoi's capital and Ho Chi Minh City. So a high-speed railway not only could help the mobility, but also help the national economic integration. Now the next part will be represented by Duy.
So the importance of the project in Vietnam first is to realizing the national guidelines and the government strategic vision, because this project is identified as a strategic breakthrough in the infrastructures, laying the foundation for Vietnam to become a developed nation. It is also meeting the large scale passenger transport demand, because the north and south economic corridor is the country's vital transportation artery connecting the largest political and economic centers, which is Hanoi and Vietnam. And with the design capacity of 240 million passengers per year, this high-speed railway will be the optimal solutions for us. It will also boost the industry and job market, because the sheer scale of this project will create millions of new jobs, including the thousands of positions for highly skilled engineers and technicians across many phases. It is also, to restructuring market shares and optimizing the logistics system. The national logistic cost in Vietnam right now accounts for 60 to 80% of the total GDP, where the goods transport is primarily handled by sea and inland waterways. The roads handle short distance, and the railway handle the medium and long. However, the passenger transport is facing a severe imbalance, so renovating the upgrading gauge will fundamentally meet the freight transport needs, and shifting the passenger base to the new high-speed railway will reduce the freight transport pressure on other modes and enhance the competitive capacity for the economy. It will also create macroeconomic growth momentum by contributing an additional 0.97 percentage point to the country's average annual GDP growth, and the 23 passenger stations will be using the transit-oriented development, which means that they will transform the area surrounding the stations into new growth economic poles. And finally, is promoting green development. This fully electrified system is the greenest and most sustainable transport mode. 60 to 70% of the total route length on viaducts and in tunnels will solve the problem of protecting the essential agricultural land and reducing the traffic accident rates. And the challenges that this project is facing is the land clearance, because the site clearance will be very essential and difficult, requiring measures such as the proactive allocations of resettlement land for the effective residents, and also the early relocations of technical infrastructure works. The technology transfer and operational capacity also having some difficulties, because Vietnam has no prior experience in constructing such large scale project. We also lack contractors with proven expertise in high speed rail development, and we don't really have a sufficiently qualified workforce with enough technical capacity to manage and operate a system effectively. And our investment form, there hasn't been a more adequate basis, rather than the public investment approach that has already been approved by the government. And finally, is the country like China, Japan possessing high-speed rail rarely transfer their core technology. So mastering the production technology for high-speed trains will require extremely large financial resources, strong foundation in core industry and supporting industry. And thank you for listening. These are references.